Daf Yomi Tractate Menachot 55b with the words Afiyah B'chalal Haisa. Okay, Afiyah B'chalal Haisa Lam Yatzaz Hekish Aleha Ma Afiyah B'yuches Shehi Ma'aseh Yechidi V'chayav Aleha B'fnei Atzma Afani Avi L'shasa V'echasa. The Braita explains this derivation. Baking leaven was included in the general prohibition incorporating all of the stages involved in preparing the meal offering. Why did it emerge? Why did it emerge from the generalization to be mentioned explicitly? It emerged in order to compare the other stages to it, just as the act of baking is notable, in that it is a single, meaning separately defined action, and one is liable to receive lashes for it by itself. If the dough is leavened, so too I will include the other stages of the preparation of the meal offering, meaning kneading it and shaping it, and conclude that one is liable separately for each of these actions if the dough is leavened. And the same applies to any single action involved in the preparation of a meal offering. This statement serves to include the act of smoothing the surface of the dough with water. The reason this act is included is that although it is not a significant stage in the preparation of the dough, it is a single independent action, and therefore one is liable to receive lashes for it by itself. This Braita demonstrates that one cannot derive the prohibition against allowing the remainder of a meal offering to become leavened from the verse, "It shall not be baked with leaven," as this verse is the source of a different halacha. If so, from where is that prohibition derived? Anan Michelkam Kambrinon. The Gemara answers the verse, "It shall not be baked with leaven." It is required for the principle stated earlier. We say that the prohibition against allowing the remainder of a meal offering to become leavened is derived from the subsequent phrase, "I have given it as their portion of my offerings made by fire," Leviticus 6:10. The remainder is the portion of the meal offering eaten by the priests. The Gemara challenges, but once it has been determined that the term "their portion" teaches the prohibition against leavening the remainder of a meal offering, one can say this entire section of the verse comes only for this purpose, which would mean that there is no source for the halacha that one is liable separately for each stage of the preparation of a meal offering with leaven. Imkain lichtov chelkom lo yisel v'chomes, mai lo yisel v'chomes chelkom, shemat mino taldi. The Gemara answers, one cannot say that this teaches only the prohibition against leavening the remainder of a meal offering, as if so, let the verse write, "Their portion shall not be baked with leaven." What is meant by the fact that the verse stated it in a different order, "shall not be baked with leaven"? "I have given it as their portion." This indicates that one should learn from this two halachot, meaning that there is a prohibition against leavening the remainder of a meal offering, and that one is liable to receive a separate set of lashes for each stage of preparation performed with leavened dough. משום דהבי דבר שהיה בכלל יוצא מן הכלל ללמד לא ללמד על עצמו יוצא אלא ללמד על הכלל כולו יצא. The Gemara raises another difficulty. One can say that the act of baking, this seems to be like in the Rabbi Yishmael's principles, it seems like. The Gemara raises another difficulty, but one can say that the act of baking is different, as the merciful one specified it in the Torah, and therefore one should be liable to receive one set of lashes for baking the dough. As for the other stages in the preparation of a meal offering, kneading, shaping, and smoothing, which are not explicitly stated in the verse, let him be liable to receive one set of lashes for all of them. The Gemara answers that this cannot be the halakha because baking is something that was included in a generalization but emerged from the generalization in order to teach a halakha. According to a hermeneutic principle, a case of this kind did not emerge to teach a halakha only about itself, but rather it emerged to teach a halakha about the entire generalization. In this case, about all the other stages in the preparation of a meal offering. ואימה לא תעשה כלל, לא תהווה פרט, כלל ופרט, אין בכלל אלא מה שבפרט, אביה, in מדאחריני לא. The Gemara further challenges, but one can say, that the phrase shall not be made with leaven is a generalization, as it does not mention any specific act, and the phrase it shall not be baked with leaven is a detail, as it specifies one particular stage of preparation. And there's another standard hermeneutic principle: when there is a generalization and a detail, the generalization is referring only to that which is specified in the detail. In this case, that would mean that baking, yes, is included in this prohibition, but other matters, for example, kneading and shaping, are not included. Amar Rabbi Apotriki משום דהרי כלל ופרט המרוחקים זה מזה וכל כלל ופרט המרוחקים זה מזה אינו דנין אותן בכלל ופרט. Rabbi Aptoriki said, the hermeneutic principle is not relevant here because this is a case of a generalization and a detail that appear in the Torah distant from one another, as the phrase shall not be made with leaven, Leviticus 2:11, is far from the expression it shall not be baked with leaven, Leviticus 6:10. And for any instance of a generalization and a detail that appear in the Torah distant from one another, I don't know who standardized the distance, but anyway, okay, who distant from one another, one cannot derive a halakha from them by analyzing them as a generalization and a detail. Okay. Where were we? Okay. Mesiv Ravadi Bahava Amrele Kedi Uklal ופרט המרוחקים זה מזה אין דני נויסן בכלל ופרט ותניא ושחט נויסו במקוים אשר ישחט האוילו לפני השם וחטאס הוא היכן אוילו נשחטס בצפוין אף זה בצפוין. Rav Ada Bar Ahava raised an objection. Some say this objection is unattributed. It's Kadi. And it is correct that in the case of a generalization and a detail that appears in Torah, distant from one another, one cannot derive a halacha from them by analyzing them as a generalization and a detail. Well, is it correct that you can't? Maybe you could. But is it taught in a Braita? Isn't it taught in a Braita with regard to a goat brought by a king as a sin offering? The verse says, and he shall place his hand upon the head of the goat and slaughter it in the place where they slaughter the burnt offering before the Lord. It is a sin offering, Leviticus 4:24. Where is the burnt offering slaughtered? On the northern side of the temple courtyard, as it is stated, and you shall slaughter it on the side of the altar northward before the Lord. Leviticus 1:11. This sin offering of a king must consequently also be slaughtered in the north of the temple courtyard. The Braita asks, and do you learn this halakha from here? But isn't it already stated, speak to Aaron and his sons, saying, this is the law of the sin offering. In the place where the burnt offering is slaughtered, shall the sin offering be slaughtered before God? It is most holy, Leviticus 6:18. If so, to what purpose was this singled out? Why does the Torah state explicitly that the sin offering of the king requires slaughter in the north? The Braita answers, it is to fix a place for it, that this is the only place where a sin offering may be slaughtered, teaching that if he did not slaughter it in the north of the temple courtyard, he has disqualified it even after the fact. Ata oimer, kach yotzos, Ieno ela shize taum tzafoin, Einach taum tzafoin, Talmud lo imau, Yishachat desachatos, Bimakoy mashishcha desoilo. Zebono av lechor chatois, Shetuunois tzafoin. The Braita asks, do you say that it is singled out for this purpose, to teach that even after the fact of a sin offering slaughtered anywhere other than in the north is disqualified? Or perhaps it is only to teach that this goat sin offering requires slaughter in the north, but no other goat sin offering requires slaughter in the north. The Braita answers, the verse states elsewhere, and he shall place his hand upon the head of the sin offering, and slaughter the sin offering in the place of burnt offering. Leviticus 4:29. And this established a paradigm for all sin offerings, that they require slaughter in the north. Therefore, the additional verse stated with regard to the sin offering of a king teaches that if he did not slaughter it in the north, it is disqualified. Time in the cousin of Zachatos. Halav hachi have amina shizet taum tzafoin. The Gemara analyzes the Braita. The reason that all sin offerings must be slaughtered in the north is that the merciful one rode and slaughtered the sin offering in the place of the burnt offering, from which it can be inferred that if not for this verse, I would say that only the sin offering, the male goat brought by a king, requires slaughter in the north, but no other type of sin offering requires slaughter in the north. What is the reason for this? After all, the verse in the place where the burnt offering is slaughtered, shall the sin offering be slaughtered, appears to be referring to all types of sin offerings. Lav mishum dahavi klal uprat, yafal gav de meruchakin, zemize doni noisan michlal uprat. Isn't it because the verse is a generalization and a detail? As the verse first generalizes about all sin offerings, and then the verse concerning the sin offering of a king and slaughter in the place where they slaughter the burnt offering is a detail, as is referring to a specific sin offering. And even though the verse concerning sin offerings and the verse concerning the sin offering of a king are distant one from another, nevertheless, we would derive a halacha from them by means of the principle of a generalization and a detail. This appears to disprove the explanation of Rabbi Aptariki. Maskiv Ravashi, Hai Klal Prat hu. Prat u Klal hu, Benase Klal Moisif ala Prat, Bisrabe Lehu Kol Mili. Rabbi Ashi objects to this claim raised by Rav Adabar Ahava. Is this a generalization and a detail? It is in fact a detail and a generalization, as the verse, and slaughtered it in the place where they slaughtered the burnt offering, Leviticus 4:24, appears in the Torah earlier than the verse in the place where the burnt offering is slaughtered, the sin offering shall be slaughtered, Leviticus 6:18. A hermeneutic principle states that in this case, the generalization adds to the detail and includes all matters. Elotano oisei kol kashyalei v'hochi kol ma'u I enu ela shezeh ton safon v'nachel ton safon rather the reason that if not for specific textual derivation we would have thought that only sin offering brought by a king requires a slaughter in the north is that the word it, which is an exclusion, is difficult for the time of the Braita, as it is unclear what this term serves to exclude. And this is what the Braita is saying. Or perhaps the verse is teaching that only this sin offering requires slaughter in the north, but no other type of sin offering requires slaughter in the north, as the merciful one writes, it, which is an exclusion, therefore the additional verse, and slaughtered the sin offering in the place of the burnt offering, teaches that this halacha applies to all burnt offerings. V'hashta t'nafkalei v'shachad es achatas oisel mutei ma'il mutei nachshon b'shachad of Pesach Siman. The Gemara asks, and now that the time the Braita derives it from the phrase, and slaughter the sin offering in the place of the burnt offering to exclude what does the term it serve? The Gemara answers, it serves to exclude the case that emerges from the following discussion, summarized by the mnemonic Nachshon and slaughter bird on Passover. Okay? Also, B'safon, B'in Shiyu, Nachshon, B'safon. The Gemara explains the first suggestion. It, meaning the goat sin offering of the king, is slaughtered in the north, but the goat offered by Nachshon, the prince of the tribe of Judah, was not slaughtered in the north of the tabernacle. He, along with the other princes of the tribes, brought offerings to inaugurate the altar and the tabernacle, as recorded in the Torah. And see Numbers chapter 7. The sin offerings brought at this time were unique because they were not brought to atone for any sin. A sin offering that doesn't atone for sin. Interesting. And the term it teaches that even though they had some characteristics of a sin offering, the offerings of the princes did not require slaughter in the north. So Gemara explains, it might enter your mind to say that since the sin offerings of the princes are included in the requirement of placing hands, they are also included in the requirement to be slaughtered in the north. Therefore, the term it teaches us that there was no requirement to slaughter in the north for the goats brought as sin offerings by Nachshon and the other princes. The Gemara asks, and from where do we derive that the requirement of placing hands on the head of the animal itself applies to the goats offered by Nachshon and the other princes? The Gemara answers, as it is taught in Braita, the verse states with regard to the sin offering of a king, and he shall place his hand upon the head of the goat, and slaughter it in the place where they slaughter the burnt offering before the Lord. It is a sin offering. Leviticus 4:24. The verse could have stated upon its head. The reason it adds of the goat is to include the goat brought as a sin offering by Nachshon in the requirement of placing hands on the head of an offering. This is the statement of Rabbi Yehuda. Shimon says, okay, we'll finish here. We'll continue next video.